Well, hey friends, how are you doing? I'm glad you're with me today. We're going through a Bible reading plan. We're in the book of Hebrews. And so today, let's talk about that a little bit. First of all, I want to make mention Hebrews. We don't know who wrote Hebrews, but we do know that it was written to the Hebrew nation that believed in Jesus Christ. You know, the Jewish people that believed in Jesus, the Israelites who believed in Jesus. These are all, Jews, Israelites, the Hebrew people, one and the same. So just want you to understand that. That's who it's written to. They were written to most likely a group that was dispersed from Israel at the time, but they're just being encouraged to keep the faith. In chapter 1, it talks about how Jesus is greater than the angels that worked in behalf to set the law of Moses in place. And now we're seeing in chapter 3, it turns that Jesus is greater than angels. Jesus is also greater than Moses himself. And so these are just reminders and it's making a point. So let's read it and check it out, okay? You ready? Here we go. Chapter 3, verse 5. Moses was faithful as a servant in all God's house, bearing witness to what would be spoken by God in the future. Okay? Future, get that. But Christ is faithful as the Son over God's house. And we are his house if indeed we hold firmly to our confidence in the hope in which we glory. It goes on in verse 12. Let me just read two more verses. See to it, brothers and sisters, that none of you has a sinful, unbelieving heart that turns away from the living God. But encourage one another daily as long as it is called today, so that none of you may be hardened by sin's deceitfulness. Okay, so let's unpack that just very quickly. God worked in the past through Moses, but now God has spoken in the last days that it speaks of in chapter 1, the last days that came with the birth of Jesus into the world, the last days. But now he's spoken to us through Jesus. God himself come to speak to us. Jesus is the creator. Jesus is the builder of the house that God is building, and we become the structure itself. We do this by listening to Christ's voice and entering into his rest, his restoration of all things. God come through Jesus and restored the world, redeemed the world, rescued the world. And that was through his death and resurrection. So they're just saying here, this is who we are. We are a creation made by Jesus Christ. And so, of course, he is the voice that we are to listen to, the voice of God, the voice of Christ. Okay, we are warned here. It goes into, after verse 6, it goes into some different Psalms that is being quoted. And by the way, you're going to have lots of quotations in reading the Hebrews book from the Old Testament. So it starts quoting several things there, talking about how the people of Israel in the past with Moses, they were rescued from their slavery by the hand of Moses. God working through Moses delivered them from the slavery, but they never entered into the promised land. They never entered into what this passage starts talking about, the rest of God. The rest, R-E-S-T, the Sabbath rest of God being delivered. We've been delivered from Satan's bondage, the bondage of sin and our rebellion. We've been delivered through Christ, and we want to hold firm to our faith. It's what it encourages us to do. Don't have an unbelieving heart like the people in the desert and ended up wandering around and died there and never entered the promised rest, the promised land. We have the same analogy is for us. We don't need to be delivered by Christ only to become an unbelieving person and not experience all that God has for us. And so, and that's why it's, and it talks about in verse 13, but encourage one another daily as long as it is called today. And that was, if you look back a couple verses before that, that's what is quoting from Psalm 95. It says, today, if you hear God's voice, don't harden your hearts. We're just being warned. Don't harden our hearts. Life is difficult and challenging, but we don't need to waver in our faith. That's why we're talking about keeping the faith. And that's what we're being encouraged to do. So today, no matter what it's looking like, keep the faith. Keep the faith. Trust God. He takes the long view. He's going to work things out. We need to have faith in the journey. It's kind of like that journey that the Israelites were taking through the desert. Only some of them made it because they wouldn't keep the faith. We're encouraged. Keep the faith. Hang in there, guys. God loves you. And I love you too. And thank you for joining with me. Read chapter 3. If you want to get the full thought, you can read, it starts from 3:1 and it doesn't really finish the thought until chapter 4, about verse 13. If you want to read all that, you can. If you don't, pick up chapter 4 tomorrow and just think about today when you start reading it. Okay. God bless you guys. And I hope to talk to you very soon. See ya.